Hello, dear guests, partners. I'm glad to share some thoughts about our experience of creating fully digital society. I've been working for Estonian government for more than 20 years, and through these 2 decades, I have seen the rise and shine of Estonian e-society, working closely on the legislative frame, developing e-residency, startup visa program, and digital nomad visa program. So by now we have proved that e-society is convenient and also provides resilience in crisis. When we started our e-government in 2001, we actually created an X-road, which is a secure layer for data exchange. And then in 2002, we created e-government. And then, of course, it was already very easy to come out with new ideas. And we launched e-residency 2014, startup visa in 2017. And last year, we came out with digital nomad visa. And what do we really think that it's the government's responsibility to provide secure identity management tools for people? The key issue communicating with each other in the internet is how to be sure that the person is who he or she claims to be. So there are all sorts of identity tokens available, but we believe that it's really the government's task to provide secure identity management. And based on that, you can have nice programs for other people as well. So when a state issues a document confirming a person's identity, then the state takes responsibility for the right identification of the person. And person's name, a unique identification code, and biometrics are tied together so that the person will have a legal identity. And it's a very good tool to avoid several identities, identity thefts, and using false identity, which are the main problems, of course, in the world. And our people really love our e-government and our e-society because, according to our experience, e-government is based on trust, and it not has to be secure and trustworthy, but it also has to seem and secure and trustworthy to people. And our people, as I said, love our e-society. Out of the population of 1.3 million, 99% of population holds a valid DGID. And basically, we trust e-voting at parliament and local government elections. In parliament elections 2019, when we had the percentage of already 44 of people who used e-voting. And we have our lovely e-residents, more than 78,000 already, and they come from more than 170 countries. And to be honest, e-residency is quite profitable as well, because all these people have created more than 16,000 companies. So we are glad to share our e-society with them. And as mentioned, startup visa, maybe it could be combined with e-residency. The same about the digital nomad visa, but it will be most probably next year, not this year. So basically, when we were living nicely our very convenient digital lifestyle, then something happened that we really could have imagined only in the darkest scenarios. we suddenly found ourselves in the middle of the ID crisis that affected more than 2/3 of our population. So it appeared that the chip we used was with a flaw, and the nature of the risk was that the private key could be computed out of the public key, which means that it was possible to steal a digital identity without having the physical card present. Of course, we immediately took technical countermeasures. More than 740,000 EIDs were suspended, and by the 1st of April, the cards not renewed were finally revoked. But the main tool we had was trust, because e-Estonia is based on trust. Immediately when we found out that the risk might be real, we became public. Our Prime Minister went public and said that we have a real problem. But the trust is the main issue that really helps to have a fully digital society. So when we had our EID crisis, it became very clear that transparency, openness, and honesty is the one that helps us going. So the ID crisis in 2017 shook our fully digital society a lot, but we learned a lot of it as well. So basically, we learned that EID card is more important than we knew. So actually, we were not the only ones who used the chip. Basically, 1.3 billion chips and ID cards of more than 10 states were revoked. And I would say no one even noticed, because they don't have a fully digital society. So it was not that important to other states, but our society was in a crisis. Then the other lesson we learned is have alternatives. Fortunately, we had our mobile ID, and that is as good as EID card since 2011. And partly we could switch to that. Map and update cross-dependencies of critical services. Have plan A, plan B, and plan C at least. And the pool of experts is limited, duplicate if possible. And we were very glad to find out that the backup of experts working for the government are experts working in the private sector. Then, no one wants to go back to the paper, even if they could. People queued for hours to have a new ID card. And certified does not mean secure. We definitely used a chip on our ID card that was certified and provided by a respectable international company. But in 2014, when the chip was certified, there was no technology to discover that the flaw was there. And last but not least, this will not be the last of such incidents, so be prepared. And we found out that the trust was there because in the middle of the ID crisis, we had our local government elections, and almost 32% of people used e-voting. So obviously, current pandemic has become an accelerator of creating understanding why people across the world need and deserve a secure digital identity. And this is what we definitely are very glad to share our experience. Other countries are also working on e-residency. Then US has used Estonian election tools as an example to be used. Then, of course, we had Brexit. And we have Estonian fan club across the borders. These are our e-residents. So, in conclusion, it is most important to invest in secure technology, but it is as important as that to invest in transparency and trust. And in case the secure digital relationships between people themselves and between the state and the person are reliable, e-society can be established. And you are most welcome to contact us, and we gladly share our experience developing the first fully digital society. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Ruth, for that very good insight into how the eID has been used in different sectors, and also how it has sparked developments like e-residency, among other things. We've got plenty of questions from the audience, but first I would like to take a look at the results of our first poll that we put forward to you, the audience. And we can see, so how would you describe the state of eID availability in your particular country? We can see that actually is quite a big split between we have eID options in our country and they really work, and we have them, but there are no connected services to them, and thus there is not a lot of uptake. I think this is actually quite a symptomatic overview of the world. So we see that more and more developments have been made in countries around the world, but that we're still waiting for the service implementation in most countries. Would you agree with that assessment?
Yeah, I definitely agree with that, because you have to have the whole ecosystem in place to have a fully digital society. If you have a very, very secure digital identity card and no services, it would be just a waste of money. And when you have services, but you don't have a secure token to use it, so it won't work. It has to be the whole ecosystem. You won't have very high usage rates if you don't have an electronic ID, that's for sure. We've got many questions, and I can already apologize right now, we will not have time to deal with all of them. The first one actually goes very much into your area of expertise. How do you handle asylum seekers when an identity has not been confirmed? Do they also get an eID? I'm guessing also about the refugee crisis. How did that affect Estonia back then? Yes, we provide everyone a secure eID. Basically, what we do is if a person doesn't have any documents, we take the name the person says to us, and then we provide a secure identity code, which is a unique one, and we tie that identity to the person's biometrics. So we really don't know whether the person is really the one he or she claims to be, but at least from that point of view, Estonian government knows that person by that name, because with secure biometrics, the person can have just one identity. And you have to make a start somewhere, right? Exactly. Yeah. So if you have no previous information, then electronic ID itself does not help you solve the problems of the past in that case. Does Estonia have a plan to implement remote onboarding to get electronic ID cards or electronic identities without physically visiting a state authority? I'm guessing this is primarily a question for foreigners and maybe EU residents as well. I think I know your answer. Yes, we are tied to our eIDAS regulation, which means that at some point a person has to be physically identified. But we are considering that all sorts of options, and definitely if something like that would happen, then most probably it would be the second document. Yeah. It's not the first document. First we establish the identity of the person, and then from that way on we can maybe have some shortcuts. The digital access, yeah.
Absolutely. I'll answer this next question just very shortly myself. What are the procedures to establish a company without a physical visit to Estonia? Number one, get an e-residency card. You do have to show up once to the next pickup point, usually an embassy. There are exceptions. And then you just go to the state portal and you do it. It takes around 20 to 30 minutes. You need a European Union bank account, not even an Estonian bank account anymore. So that goes quite quickly as well. Now, here's another question that forces us to look beyond Estonia. And I'm sure that you've been aware of these developments as well. Switzerland just voted last weekend against a Swiss e-ID, the main reason being not trusting private companies to run it, even though it would be controlled by the government. So trust seems to be paramount in Switzerland. What was your experience in Estonia in that aspect? How did you treat that topic?
As I said, Estonian e-government is based on trust. So the government was the one who established the X-Road to have data exchange between information systems. And the other part is that I think Estonia is so small that everyone knows everyone. So it's very easy to trust the government. And when we, of course, it's up to procurement, and it would be not the wisest thing, I would say, that we would have a huge production line and producing the ID cards. We take care that the data on the chip and on the card is the one that it is supposed to be. So it can be checked by the person who has looked at the data, but just the real production of ID cards
happens elsewhere. Yeah. I should also add that yes, in Estonia, of course, it happened comparable to what was proposed in Switzerland. The government commissioned a solution, the private sector provided the solution, and then the government takes it over for operation at the end of the day. So I think that this system can work overall, but of course the government needs to make sure that there are no backdoors, that all the security checks are made, so that the government really is in control when the solution is handed back to the public sector. I don't know about all of the different details of the Swiss solution that was proposed during the referendum, but it sounded to me like the companies would have a bit more say in how the solutions are developed. But leave that in the comments and send us an email to the briefing center. We love talking about these questions as well. Another question is, how does Estonia feel about using biometrics instead of PIN codes for its e-ID carriers? Let's say Smart ID, you have the app, you just put your fingerprint or something. I have a very strong opinion on this. I think you do too.
Yes, definitely. To have a secure identity, digital identity, so that people could trust it, the whole process has to be controlled by the government. We don't know what devices people will use at home. So maybe someday, but to have a real secure identity, to make sure that the person really is the one with the government identity behind that computer or behind that phone. We are not there yet.
It should be something in your head rather than something on your body that somebody could take away theoretically quite easily.
Yeah, the best one would be that you have three components.
Yes.
Something what you have physically, something what you know, your codes, and something what you are. Biometrics, that would be the best solution, but of course we can combine these things.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Ruth, thank you so much. It's been fascinating to talk to you, and also thank you, dear audience members, for all the questions.